You probably think the deepest pain a man can experience is betrayal. But it's not. The real pain comes from holding someone close while secretly feeling they're no longer yours. It's realizing too late that the connection changed long before the truth ever surfaced. Most men convince themselves her distance is just stress, exhaustion, or the routine of a long relationship. But sometimes the reality is far more uncomfortable. Women rarely confess directly, yet their behavior often reveals more than their words ever will. And if you ignore the signs, you slowly become a participant in your own heartbreak. That's why today we're going to break down 8 signs that may reveal emotional detachment or hidden betrayal in a relationship. These are the signals many men overlook until the damage is already done, and the final sign is the one that's hardest to hide, no matter how carefully someone tries to cover it up. Before we get into it, take a moment to subscribe, hit like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I always want to see how far these conversations reach, because pain, confusion, and betrayal sound the same in every language. Now let's begin. The first sign is subtle, quiet, and often ignored until it slowly destroys the relationship from the inside. Number 1, the silence of her body. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from words. It comes from energy, from touch, from the way someone responds to your presence. And when you've been with a woman long enough, you recognize that shift immediately. You know the difference between a warm embrace and a distant one. You know when her touch feels natural and when it feels forced. One day you lean in for a kiss and she slightly turns away. You reach for her in bed, and instead of relaxing into you, her body feels tense or disconnected. She says she's tired, but it doesn't feel like exhaustion. It feels like emotional distance, and that difference matters. Fatigue fades with rest. Emotional disconnection usually doesn't. Here's the uncomfortable truth many men avoid. When someone becomes emotionally fulfilled somewhere else, they often stop seeking closeness in the same way at home. Their energy changes, the hunger disappears, and no matter how hard you try, you can feel that something no longer flows naturally between you. The mistake most men make is denial. They tell themselves it's just stress, age, work pressure, or routine. But attraction rarely disappears overnight for no reason. Usually something underneath the surface has changed. So what should you do? Don't beg for affection. Don't force connection. Observe. Pull back slightly and pay attention. Does she naturally move closer again? Or does the distance continue growing? Someone who still deeply values the relationship eventually reaches back. Someone emotionally checked out often lets the silence grow even louder. Your job isn't to force love out of someone. Your job is to recognize when the connection is fading before you completely lose yourself chasing it. And once physical warmth disappears, another sign usually follows right behind it. Number 2, sudden changes in routine. When someone starts hiding parts of their life, their habits often begin changing too. Maybe she suddenly showers the second she gets home. Maybe there's a new perfume you've never smelled before. Maybe she changes clothes immediately, guards her phone more carefully, or becomes unusually protective of her privacy. On the surface, these things can look harmless. Self-care, personal space, stress relief. And sometimes they are harmless. But what matters isn't the action itself. What matters is the sudden shift in behavior. Patterns tell stories. If she never used to rush to the bathroom after work, but now does every single day, you notice. If her routines suddenly become secretive or inconsistent, you pay attention. Human behavior rarely changes dramatically without a reason behind it. The biggest mistake men make here is dismissing their instincts because they're afraid of the answer. They explain everything away because facing uncertainty feels terrifying, but ignoring obvious changes doesn't protect you. It only delays clarity. This doesn't mean you become paranoid. It means you stay aware, calmly aware. Because once behavior changes, emotions usually start leaking out in other ways too. Number 3, constant irritation and blame. When guilt or emotional conflict builds inside someone, they often stop looking inward and start projecting outward. Suddenly, you become the problem no matter what you do. You're too quiet, too busy, too emotional, too distant, too relaxed, too controlling. Every small thing turns into an argument, and you begin feeling like you can never get it right. This usually isn't random. Sometimes people create conflict because conflict helps justify their emotional distance. If they convince themselves you're the villain, then they don't have to confront their own choices or confusion. And the trap many men fall into is trying to defend themselves endlessly. They argue, explain, and fight for understanding. But you can't argue someone into honesty when they're emotionally disconnected. Instead of reacting emotionally every time she snaps at you, stay calm. Observe the pattern. Ask yourself honestly whether the criticism feels constructive or whether it feels like constant emotional punishment. Strength is not losing yourself inside endless arguments. Strength is recognizing when the relationship dynamic itself has shifted, and eventually, the body reveals what words try to hide. Number 4, your intuition keeps warning you. A woman can rehearse explanations. She can control her words carefully, but energy is much harder to fake consistently. That's why so many men feel something is wrong long before they ever discover the truth. You notice changes in eye contact, changes in intimacy, changes in emotional presence. Sometimes she feels strangely disconnected even while sitting right next to you. Other times she becomes overly affectionate in ways that feel unnatural or forced. And deep down, your instincts react before your mind catches up. The problem is most men talk themselves out of what they already feel. They call themselves insecure, overthinking, paranoid. But intuition exists for a reason. It's your mind recognizing patterns before you consciously process them. That doesn't mean every gut feeling equals betrayal, but it does mean you shouldn't ignore repeated emotional signals just because the truth feels uncomfortable. Because denial doesn't save relationships, it only delays reality. And sometimes guilt creates the opposite reaction entirely. Number 5, sudden excessive affection. Not every emotionally disconnected person becomes cold immediately. Sometimes they become warmer than ever, more affectionate, more attentive, more emotional, and this confuses men deeply. After days or weeks of distance, suddenly she's hugging you more, holding your hand, telling you she loves you constantly, acting sweeter than usual. Naturally, your heart wants to believe the relationship is healing. But sometimes that affection isn't coming from renewed desire. Sometimes it comes from guilt. Psychologically, people often overcompensate after doing something they feel conflicted about. They try to quiet their conscience by becoming extra loving, extra caring, extra emotionally available. The mistake is automatically accepting sudden affection as proof everything is okay again. Real connection feels steady and genuine. Forced affection often feels exaggerated, inconsistent, or strangely timed. So instead of immediately relaxing, ask yourself one question. Does this warmth feel natural, or does it feel like an apology without words? That question alone can reveal more than you expect, and eventually, emotional absence becomes impossible to ignore. Number 6, emotional distance during intimacy. There's a massive difference between physical closeness and emotional presence, and once you feel that difference, you can never completely unfeel it. Everything may look normal on the surface. The relationship continues. The intimacy still happens. But emotionally, something feels missing. Her energy feels absent. Her eyes feel distant. Her attention seems somewhere else entirely. And that's one of the most painful experiences a man can go through because it creates loneliness while lying right beside someone. Most men respond by trying harder. More affection, more effort, more patience. They believe if they just love harder, the connection will return. But you cannot force emotional presence out of someone who has mentally checked out. At some point, you have to stop chasing the version of the relationship that only exists in your memory. And if emotional distance continues growing, it eventually spills into daily life too. Number 7, increasing absence and weak excuses. When someone genuinely values a relationship, they naturally make space for it. Even busy people find ways to prioritize what matters to them. But when emotional investment fades, excuses start multiplying. She comes home later more often. Her explanations feel rushed or inconsistent. Plans change last minute. Communication becomes unpredictable. And every time you question it, you somehow end up feeling guilty for even asking. Here's what many men misunderstand. The issue isn't a single late night or one cancelled plan. Life happens. The real issue is repeated patterns. Patterns reveal priorities. And the more you ignore repeated disrespect, the more you silently teach people that your boundaries don't matter. That doesn't mean becoming controlling. It means calmly acknowledging reality. If someone continuously treats the relationship casually while expecting full access to your loyalty, something is wrong. And eventually, the cracks begin showing in their stories too. Number 8. Contradictions and collapsing explanations. Lies are difficult to maintain over time because details eventually stop lining up. Stories change, timelines shift, explanations become inconsistent. One day it was work, another day it was traffic. Then it becomes something completely different. And slowly you start noticing the contradictions. But the biggest mistake men make at this stage is obsessing over perfect proof. They become detectives instead of men protecting their peace. They chase screenshots, explanations, and confessions, hoping certainty will somehow remove the pain. The truth is, by the time trust completely collapses, your instincts usually already know what your mind is still trying to avoid. At some point, the issue stops being whether she's lying. The issue becomes whether you're willing to keep lying to yourself. And that's the final truth behind all 8 signs. This isn't about turning you into a paranoid man constantly suspicious of every small detail. It's about helping you stop abandoning your own self-respect just to avoid difficult truths. Not every sign means betrayal. Sometimes relationships suffer because of stress, emotional burnout, poor communication, or unresolved pain. That's why maturity matters. Instead of reacting with rage, you observe calmly. You communicate honestly. You test whether the connection can still be repaired. And if it can, you fight for it together. But if the patterns keep repeating, if your intuition keeps screaming, and if respect continues disappearing, then the strongest thing you can do is choose yourself instead of clinging to false hope. Because love should never require you to lose your dignity in order to keep it. So here's the challenge. Think about one situation where you ignored your instincts because facing reality felt too painful. Maybe it was emotional distance. Maybe it was constant excuses. Maybe it was a relationship that slowly drained your confidence. This time, don't ignore it. Face it honestly. Decide whether it's something worth repairing or something you need to walk away from. Either way, the decision belongs to you. Before you leave, hit subscribe, tap like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And in the comments, tell me honestly, have you ever experienced one of these signs in real life? How did you handle it? Because your story might help another man wake up before he loses himself completely. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of taking back your clarity, your self-respect, and your freedom to choose relationships without ever abandoning yourself in the process.